Hello, how are you? So in this video I'm going to show you how to draw an elf face, so a very simple way to do it. One of the most important things in the elves is the ears, right? So they're usually pointy. So this is something we need to have into consideration. This is almost the main thing, but there are other things that you can do to make them look a bit more elfic, let's say it this way. So one thing I like to do is a more elongated face. So sometimes I will draw the head very round, something like this, but with elves I like to go with something a bit more thin and elongated. So we go right here, we exaggerate here a little bit more. We have here our eyes, and then here we go down, make the face a little bit longer, very thin and longer. Now this is just a sketch, don't worry yet how perfect this is going to look like, because we can refine everything later on. Next, let's go for the neck, just so it's not just a floating head here. So again, a very long neck. They like to stand very straight, they always, or almost always, of course it depends on the stories you're telling, of course, but in most stories consider themselves to be a superior race, and I think that drawing them very long and very tall does help that get idea across, you know. So now let's go for the face itself. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So now it's time to go here for our pointy ears. The most important feature in an elf is the ears. So we're going to go right here and draw a triangle for the ears. They can be as big or as small as you want. It's totally up to your own taste. Now here we do something like this and this. So I like to draw them very pointy and quite long. If I'm going for maybe, for example, a goblin or an elfling, I like to round the ears a bit more to make them look a bit cuter and even shorten them up a little bit. But for elves, I like to go for very pointy shapes in general. I think that looks very good in them. Of course, again, this depends on the kind of character you're going for, but usually this is how I like to go about it. Now for the rest of the face, we have here our eyes. And I like to draw something not 100% round, but give it a bit of a roundness to it. So straight on the top, round at the bottom, something like this. We can even go over here and maybe tilt them a little bit. Let's see if we like that. Yes, I think that looks good. So let's do the same on the other side. There we go. And now some eyebrows right here. I like to draw thin eyebrows for elves. I always like to create my characters with very round shapes in general. For example, the eyebrows just some round circles. But for elves, I like to break those rules a little bit. I like to make some exceptions. Finally, for the nose, I also like to go for a very pointy nose like this. And now the mouth. Very simple one, smiling a little bit. We're just finding our shapes here and what we want for our elf character. Now finally we have the hair. Now of course you can have any kind of hairstyle for your character, but in general I like to draw them with very long hair. I think it's what fits them the best. We can also add here some strands of hair appearing in the front. I think that will look good. And finally we can add here just something to give a little bit more to our character, just an accessory. It's always important. They are fancy creatures, just a very simple sketch. We can just add here a little bit of clothing, something very simple. This is not what we're focusing here, but I like to add a little bit more to it. So this is basically it. We can go in and perfect this a little bit more. A lot of times I like to go and make a more detailed sketch, so I'll give some transparency to this and then go over everything and refine it even more. But in this case I'm going to go for the line art right away because this is a very simple sketch and I don't think I need to add anything else. So in general I like to give my elves very pointy features. I like them to look very altive and important and fancy, so using very elongated shapes and pointy ones, I think it really helps giving that idea of a fancy elf, of a superior creature. So now I'm just going to go over my sketch and clean everything up, adding a bit more details. I really like exaggerating the neck in my characters, and depending the kind of character I'm going for, the longer it's going to be. It's something that I really like to do. It's really disproportional, but I like the effect it gives the characters. So sometimes it's good to go against those anatomy rules, especially if you're going for a more cartoony style. Feel free to break those rules. I think it can show very fun results and something that you might want to incorporate into your own art style. So have fun with it. Don't be afraid to break those rules. Usually I like to draw long hair for my elves. I always imagine them having very flowy and long hair, but again it really depends on what you're going for. You might want to draw them with shorter hair, with a ponytail, with different hairstyles. Again, explore that. This is one example. There's so much things that you can do. There's so many things that you can do with your characters. There are almost no rules. Let's draw the rest of the face. I think it's all we're missing. So thin eyebrows, then we have almost a straighter line for the top of the eye, a curve for the bottom. Now it's a time where we just refine everything and decide how we want our drawing to look like. Pointy nose. I really like drawing my elves with a pointy nose. Let's give her some lips, very thin lips. I think an elf has very thin features in general, or this is how I like to go about it most of the times. It doesn't mean I can change my mind or draw elves in another style, but this is generally how I like to draw them. Alright, so we have here our elf face. Now we can go ahead and add some color to them. I'm going to go maybe for a very soft tones for my character, so a blonde elf probably. Let's add some color here, something like this, very Zelda-like. Then for the skin, also something quite pale. And now for our jewelry there, so something like this for the pearls. And maybe a blue or a green, for example, that goes a bit more towards nature, right? They usually live in the nature, so I think that will look good. And finally a pink for the lips right there. So now all we have to do is fix everything, add colors to where it is missing, the color bucket missed, and this is mostly it. I think this is it for our elf face. Now for the colors, of course, use whatever you want and have into account the kind of elf you're going for. For example, if you're drawing a city elf, maybe you want to go for more something like this, more fancy and paler colors. The city elves are always described like more sensitive creatures, right? So going for softer tones might work best. But for example, if you're drawing a wood elf, you might want to go and use more greens and reds and oranges, so play with those colors a little bit more. If you're drawing a dark elf, for example, you might want to use more the purples, the dark blues and the grays. And what else? There's so many colors that you can go for. Think if this is a character of yours, think about who they are, where do they live. So if you want to learn more about how to write your own characters before drawing them, I do have a video on that, so check that out. It's going to be very helpful for you for choosing how do they look like what colors you want them to have, what kind of outfits you want them to wear. These are all very important decisions that you make in your characters. So this is it. This is one way that you can use to draw your own elf characters and elf face, how I like to go about it. So have fun with it, and as always, keep on drawing.